Alright, today I'm tying a mop fly that I like to use for panfish and bass in Austin, Texas. Pretty much all over central Texas. That's what it looks like. Let's get it going. I'm going to use a mosquito hook. It's a size 8. I just get them from Bass Pro Shop. So you put that thing in the vise. You're going to want to tie the thread on. I use just a medium sized bead. I don't really have a preference. If you want it to go deeper, obviously get a bigger bead. I'm going to start with some brown thread. Tie it on there real nice. All the way back to where the bend of the hook begins. Snip off the excess, and then we're going to put on a little bit of this yarn. So I get this yarn from Walmart. You can go to Hobby Lobby or pretty much any store, but what I'll do is I'll use this lighter to kind of taper it, and if you want, you can actually kind of wave it all around the body of the yarn if you want to make it even smaller for a smaller fly, or do a little bit less flame to make sure the body of the fly is a little bit bigger. I usually want it to be an additional length of the hook back. Couple of loose wraps to begin so it doesn't go all over the place, and then you tighten it up, pull that up, and then tie it on the other side. Do a little bit of a wrap. Just kind of like to tinker with it until it looks the way I want it to be, then cinch it down. Snip off the extra bart, pull back everything, and then kind of anchor it down a little bit better. I like to make sure there's enough space for the rest of what I want to tie in here. So next I'm going to use this Orvis Ice Dubbing Tan, UV Tan. You can really use any dubbing, but also keep in mind I put way too much right here. It'll still look fine and you can pull it off after the fact, but less is more for stuff like this. So I always do 2 loose wraps and then tighten it down, and then after you're done with that, you're going to pull it back, and I really want to try and get as much of it under the bottom where the hook is, but kind of gets in the way, so sometimes you can take the fly off the vise and pull it back underneath and then tighten it in place. You can also come in after the fact and tie an additional little pinch underneath the hook if you need to, but I'm really more about my flies being practical. They're not always well balanced or beautiful, but I still catch fish. A couple more wraps. So after I've done all that, I'm going to tie in this braid, which I get off of wish.com. Actually, I get it off Alibaba now. Wish. I'd stopped working with Wish, but I'll order a bunch of it from Wish, way cheaper than buying it at your local store. There's some things that are worth buying at your local store, like hooks and lead eyes and other things like that, but for this braid stuff, you're going to save a lot more money and get way more of it if you buy it from like China. So tie the braid in. Then I'll put in my hackle. I actually do not remember what kind of hackle this is. Feel free to comment if you know. I just have a bunch of these laying around, so I kind of use them as I see fit. I've got a like green and orange and brown. So I always like to kind of thread back the hackle. I'll tie it in loosely and then pull it so that there's not as much sticking out. And then I've seen a lot of people do it different ways, but I really like to kind of pull back the feathers as best I can in one direction. I've seen some people like twist the feather and splay it all over the place to make it go everywhere, but this is the kind of the way that I like to do it. Again, it's not perfect, but if you can get those threads to start going backwards and keep pushing it, then it'll look pretty sexy at the end. Couple of wraps. Some people say I use too much when I'm getting in, like I start to get into like where the feather turns white, and sure, you might think that's too much, but that's how much I like to put in. Kind of like that it changes from brown into white a little bit. So I'll do a couple wraps behind, and then I'll pull it back and do a wrap in front. Clip that thing off. I'm just going to use my fingers to push the feather back and try to dam it all up with a couple of wraps. It's looking pretty good. I mean, that would fish even without doing anything else. Now we bring that braid over the top, and then you pull back the fibers that are trying to force their way forwards. Pull it all back. And then you're going to trap it with your thread right behind the bead. Oh yes. Get those last little fibers out of there. Snip it off with your tiny scissors. Do a couple extra wraps if you're really trying to make it look good. At this point, fish are going to eat that fly even if you don't make it perfect. Do a couple of knots. I'll snip that off, and then I'll put just some super glue from any store on there. It doesn't have to be like the fancy Zap-A-Gap or head cement that I see a lot of people use. I always find that when I use that stuff, it gets clogged. This super glue, I'll just take a blade and cut off the tip if that happens. And not as easy to do with some of the more fancy glues that cost twice as much at your local fly shop. So I always like to mess around and try to move the flash all over the fly to make it more balanced. And here I'm using some UV clear finish from Loon. This is the thick finish. Yuck. And I probably put way too much, but it really makes that hot spot pop, or the scale spot, hot spot. It's not really red, so maybe you call it something else, but I call it a hot spot, and I just think it makes the fly look unique and gives a little bit of extra flash. I finish it off with the UV, and it's pretty much good to go. I'll be fishing this fly in Town Lake on probably a 3-weight, and I like to go when the weather is cold so that there's nobody there with their dog. There's no people running around naked, but hopefully I can find a day soon to go out and fish this and show you what it looks like. Thanks for watching.
Oh, that's a good one. Oh, that's a nice perch. Oh, slab, baby. Woo! Long ear. there we go. Alright.
Well, that's all for today. I hope you had as much fun watching this video as I did making it, catching the fish, tying the flies. If you want to see more videos like this, please be sure to subscribe. And if you have any suggestions on how you think I could make the video better, or another fly you'd like to see me tie, or even a location you'd like for me to go, please leave a comment. Thanks so much.